Joining us to talk more about the border, Lieutenant Chris Olivarez, spokesperson with the Texas Department of Public Safety, South Texas region. It's always good to see you, Lieutenant. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Good to see you, Natasha. Thanks for having me on.
Let's start with what Jorge was just talking about there. The Trump administration openly considering military force against Mexican drug cartels. What is your take here, and do you think we will be seeing strikes directly on the cartels on Mexican soil?
Well, I think first off, the administration really is underscoring their campaign promise to leverage military resources, assets to go after the cartels, to dismantle their infrastructure, their criminal operations. And I think we're seeing that. We saw that from day one when this administration took office. Now, of course, the question remains to be seen, or asked, is what type of military presence will the United States actually have in Mexico? As Jorge pointed out, this is going to require cooperation from the Mexican government, from the Mexican president, who has publicly said that she does not want any military resources in Mexico whatsoever. So I think there could be some legal challenges with the Mexican government as well. But as the Secretary of State pointed out as well, is that we need to treat these organizations not just as to your typical drug dealer or street gang. These are actual foreign terror organizations that should be treated just like any other terrorist organization. The amount of people they kill, not indirectly or directly with their drugs, including fentanyl, I think that in itself really leverages and really justifies the leverage of military resources that are needed to actually go after these cartels if Mexico is not going to cooperate. And again, of course, I don't want to speculate. This is still preliminary. And of course, I'm not speaking on behalf of the administration, but I think we still need to see what that's going to look like, what type of plan they have, the strategy, what are the rules of engagement, and what will it actually look like if Mexico does not cooperate? Will we have as far as a presence in Mexico with our military resources?
I wanted to pick up on something you just mentioned, because Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum, as you said, has been clearly opposed to any U.S. troop presence in her country. How would a move like this impact diplomatic relations and border security cooperation from her?
And I was going to mention that as well, right? Obviously, Mexico is a big partner when it comes to, as far as trade and, products that are coming across the border, produce. So that in itself also, right? What is that going to look like? What is that relationship going to look like? Do we want to disrupt any type of diplomatic relations with Mexico? I don't foresee the United States wanting to do that. I think they have other strategies in place to actually go after the cartels. We saw that already from the very beginning when the administration took office. They put pressure on Mexico with some of these tariffs, and that did require the Mexican government to cooperate and really put pressure on the cartels, which we have seen. We saw just most recently in July that the Sinaloa cartel leader, El Mayo, was arrested and was taken into custody. Also, these large seizures that we're seeing on the coastal waters as well as at sea and on land from the Mexican government as well. So again, yes, that is going to require some type of cooperation with the Mexican government. But again, she has made very clear, the president from Mexico has made very clear, they do not want any type of military presence in Mexico. But I would say, though, that the military from the United States can be used in so many different ways when it comes to border security. They can gather intelligence, even go after high-level cartel members that the Mexican government would not want to arrest or cooperate with the United States. And I think that's key when we talk about border security. Right now that the cartels are weakened because of the fact there's less people coming across the border. They have been impacted not only financially, but their infrastructure as well with some of these leaders that have been arrested. Right now is the time to actually go after them and weaken them even more and put some permanent solutions in place to actually dismantle these cartel operations and prevent any further drugs or border activity coming across the border in the United States.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.